Evidence-based methods of bilateral stimulation, BLS, to use with your kid clients. I'm Jackie Flynn. I'm an EMDR-approved consultant and a registered play therapist. This webinar is only for clinicians that have completed EMDR basic training. If you have not completed EMDR basic training, this webinar is not for you. I'm going to show you how to make the ultimate shift from feeling too uncertain, not knowing what to actually do in EMDR sessions with kids, to feeling knowledgeable and confident about using a variety of developmentally appropriate ways to perform all three modalities of bilateral stimulation: visual, auditory, and tactile. I'll show you ways to perform BLS that aligns with kids' natural expression through play that they will actually do, so that you can carry out all 8 phases of EMDR with fidelity, regardless of age. Okay, so I want you to stay with me until the end. I have something that I want to share with you and show you what I have to offer. So stick with me till the end of the presentation. At this time, I would like you to turn off all distractions. Turn off your phone, turn off any notifications on your devices or on your computer. I want you to take this time to really focus on the material here. It doesn't take long, but when you know how to do your bilateral stimulation with your kid clients, it can make a world of difference, so it's worth it. Okay, so I'm going to do a kind of guess why you may be here today. The first guess that I have, the first reason you may be here, is because you're excited about the healing power of EMDR therapy. You want to use it with your child and teen clients, but you're just not sure how to actually do the bilateral stimulation, the BLS, with kids. Or maybe you're trained and experienced in EMDR therapy, but you still need practical application knowledge of exactly what materials and toys are necessary and how to use them for bilateral stimulation with kids. Or perhaps you find yourself procrastinating with starting with EMDR therapy with your kid clients because you think that you'll never be able to get them to sit still and focus long enough for bilateral stimulation. You were trained in how to do it with adults, but you think that maybe your clients are just too young and active for it to be practical. See that little cutie pie right there turned around with the balloon? She is 3 years old. Okay, so this is what I actually look like sometimes when I'm struggling with something. That's my oh my goodness face. So the first reason, you know how to do BLS with your adults, but you're not sure how to do it with kids. You may be here because you have some toys and materials in your office, but you don't know what you'll need for the BLS with the kids. Or maybe you're just frozen with procrastination because your clients don't sit still long enough to do the BLS like you were trained. Sometimes they're just running all around the office, or they're playing, because that's how kids communicate, through their play. I have been there. It can be so confusing. I remember when I was trained in my basic training, I felt so good about the type of therapy because it is incredible. When I came back to my practice, though, I was thinking, how do I actually use this with my kid clients? They weren't sitting on the couch and watching my fingers and going through the basic protocol as I had learned. So I had to get really creative, and I want to tell you that it gets better. I want to tell you that you can use all 8 phases of EMDR with your kid clients. I do it pretty much every day, and I teach people through my consultation and my trainings to do it as well, and it is so possible. So let me take just a moment to tell you about my background so you can understand where I'm coming from. I'm the host of Play Therapy Community Podcast. It's a free resource that you can find at playtherapycommunity.com. Also, there's a Facebook group where you can find a lot of resources and community in there, which is so very valuable. I'm also the host of and the founder of EMDR and Play Therapy Integration Support. That's where I provide training and consultation to clinicians that are mainly child therapists. Many of them do work with adults. I have training and experience working with adults as well. And they just want to really hone their skills, or just they may have a case that they're stuck on and they want to conceptualize, or they may be seeking EMDRIA certification. So I help with all those things. Also, I do some consultation for basic training through that EMDR and play therapy integration support. Now, that next picture, I included that because when I read that book, that's when things really shifted for me. If you haven't read Francine Shapiro's Eye Movement Desensitization and Reprocessing Therapy 3rd edition book, it is absolutely a must. It's so good. That's when things really crystallized for me. That and my certification. That's the next picture. When I went through EMDR certification process, I feel like I changed as a therapist in so many ways. And I was really able to fine tune my EMDR therapy, and I became more effective. That was a really, really big day for me. That's the day that I hung my certificate up on the wall in my office there. Also, I'm the creator of 8 Phases of EMDR Therapy with Children and Adolescents. I do that training in person as well as online. Both are approved for EMDRIA credits. The online version is 7 EMDRIA credits, and the in-person is actually 2 days, and that one is worth 12 EMDRIA credits. And I'm the creator of EMDR and Sand Tray Therapy Integrated. That course is online. It is a self-paced course. It's worth 3 EMDRIA credits, and I go through each phase of EMDR therapy in the sand tray. I love that training, as well as I do a brief introduction and overview of sand tray therapy, and also a brief introduction and an overview of EMDR therapy, and do a demonstration from beginning to end with a client so you can actually see it in action, as well as some of those extra special techniques like pendulation, titration, some grounding, looking at attachment figures in the sand tray, and all that is available at playtherapy.teachable.com. And I'll give you the URL at the end of this webinar. Okay, on the bottom you see Counseling in Brevard. I am in private practice, and I work with many, many people through that private practice, and I love using EMDR with all ages. If you look at the next picture, I'm one of 3. Along with 2 of my colleagues, we run a no-fee EMDR study group. That's us doing the GTEP protocol, the group traumatic event protocol, and integrating that with sand tray. If you can see at the bottom right, you can see my little sand tray with kinetic sand in that one and some miniatures. That GTEP, that is amazing. But I included that picture because that study group really helped me to grow as an EMDR therapist as well. Those clinicians are amazing. And the next one is a book that I have coming out later on this year, 8 Phases of EMDR with Children and Adolescents on integrating EMDR with play therapy. So be on the lookout for that coming out soon. And I'm also the creator of Animal Imagery, EMDR Inner Resource Development. So I am saying the creator and not the author. It's a book because it only has images in there, and that is used mainly in phase 2 of EMDR therapy. I use it with pretty much every client. Okay, so can you imagine what it would feel like to provide the healing power of EMDR to your kid clients, even the young ones? Look how cute she is. She's a 3-year-old, and if you could see my hands on either side of her, I'm providing the bilateral stimulation through tapping as she is in the sand tray, engaging in sand play. Okay, so one thing I really want you to walk away from this training, this webinar with, is understanding of what bilateral stimulation is. When you know what it is and what the intention of it is, then you can take whatever you have available, whether it's the situation or materials, and use it for that intent. So bilateral stimulation is basically that rhythmic left-right pattern, and it can be done in seemingly endless amount of ways through play therapy based techniques. So there's 3 methods of stimuli. There's visual, auditory, and tactile. What's really cool about this is many of the methods that we'll talk about, they will not only offer one of these methods of stimuli, but they may offer two, and there are some that even offer all three methods of this BLS. Okay, so here are some questions that I commonly get from my consultees and in the trainings as well, some of my trainees. When do I go fast or go slow? How long do I do it for? What if their level of disturbance goes up? How long or how will I know if they have an abreaction during BLS? And what should I even do? How will I know when to stop? How will I know to explain it to the client? And what if they don't like it? All of those are valid questions, and they are very common questions. So if you have those same questions, then you are not the only one. In this image there, that's me showing you how I teach kids about their brain. If you haven't watched Dr. Siegel's Handy Model of the Brain video yet, be sure to do so. It is such a great way to not only help parents understand how the brain works, but help kids understand how their own brains work as well. And when you can use that terminology, it really helps them to modify the way that the brain responds. They can engage in those grounding and calming techniques before they completely flip their lid. So if I were doing that in the true method of the handy model of the brain, I would actually have my thumb tucked in underneath my fingers. But that's a really good way to explain the brain. I love Dr. Siegel stuff. If you haven't read any Dr. Siegel work, I recommend reading every book that he has put out. So very good. So offering a multitude of creative ways to engage in all three modalities of bilateral stimulation, also known as BLS, to your child and adolescent clients means that you are no longer as hesitant to provide this healing treatment to your kid clients, but instead you are one step closer to move forward as confidently and as passionately through the phases of EMDR therapy just as you would with your adult clients. How would providing EMDR therapy to your child and teen clients impact your work? I know when I started using EMDR therapy with my kid clients, things that they were stuck on, we were able to get past. And new clients come in, it just seemed so robust and so ideal to use with child and teen clients because their memory networks are so much shorter. So I was seeing results very quickly. Okay, so let's delve into the different types of BLS. Let's talk about auditory bilateral stimulation first, and this is through hearing, right? So the first image there, the kid has the bells. I'm sitting on the other side of the sand tray with him. If you look at the bottom right, you'll see the eagle on the sand tray. I'm actually on the other side, and I'm kind of pacing him of how fast to go, how slow to go, when to pause. So he is getting that movement, and that's the bilateral stimulation, but also mainly getting the sound, right? So this method isn't, like using those bells, isn't appropriate for all kids. Sometimes they will just ring them and they won't follow my pacing. So you got to know your clients and really know what's appropriate for what kid. But for this kid, and these are actors, they're not actually real clients. I don't like to take pictures of real clients or videos, even with consent. I feel like, children clients, they don't fully know what the consent means. So these are actually my colleagues' children. But in this one, I do this so many times with those bells. Kids really take to it. The middle one, that is an image. I have that TAC audio scan. I love it. And now I have to say that I don't use the headphones as much as I used to. I haven't used them in quite a while. I do use it mainly for tactile, but you can use it for the hearing, and it just alternates beeping in one side, then the other, one side, and then the other. That's an example of one that you can have two methods of the bilateral stimulation, the auditory and the tactile. And the upgrade to that, you can actually get some of the tappers, the tactile piece, where you can do the visual as well, where they light up. So that is really cool. That's a must. But you don't want that to be the only thing that you have in your office, because if that breaks, or the kids do pull on the wires and stuff and one will stop working, I always have some backups in the office. Or the kid may not be able to tolerate the sound in their ears. You want to have some other options as well. Now, that next one, that is a little girl. She's using the drum for bilateral stimulation. That offers the tactile as well as the auditory and the visual. When she's hitting it, she's actually looking at her hands, one then the other. So that's the visual. The auditory is the sound. Even though it's right in front of her, there is a slightly different intensity of sound on either side, but mainly the tactile there. So it could be all three of them. So what I want you to do is think with the auditory. Basically, we're just our goal is to have it stimulate one side of their brain, then the other through sound. Now I want you to think, what's a creative way for auditory bilateral stimulation that you can think of? Some of the things that I do in addition to that, maybe maracas on either side, or do clapping. Also, you'll see with some of the other bilateral stimulation, just a tapping on the shoulders, they can hear it. And if you have a device that you can pipe in the client's music, that can offer auditory bilateral stimulation. Music with EMDR therapy can be incredibly effective. So there's so many ways that you can engage in that bilateral stimulation and auditory method. You just need to activate that right and that left hemisphere. Now this one, see those 3 stars above there? I put the 3 stars because this is the recommended method. If at all possible, if you can do the visual method of bilateral stimulation with anyone, that's preferred, just because that part of the brain, it actually is able to reprocess in a quicker way. So the first one, sword play. And since this webinar is only on bilateral stimulation, I won't delve into actually, you have them hold the target and the negative cognition and how you do all that. But just know that the intention there is to get his eyes to move from one side, then the other. I always put the sword in a different place, so, up and down, so that the client is looking for it. That one seems to be really desired by the clients. So I like having swords in there. I do want to say that I do prefer the pool noodles rather than those swords. The swords are nice, but the pool noodles are cheaper and they're nicer as well. So those floaty noodles that are real squishy, and you cut them in half. The next one, the hopping cones. That one is especially preferred with my clients that have a lot of energy. So you hop from one side, I'm usually right behind her or in front of her or whomever it is. They hop from one side to the other. That one's visual. She's looking where to hop to. Also, you can have her do like big leg, one over the other, and just cross the midline there. So that can also be like a method of like tactile. So you have them hold the target in the negative cognition and then go down the line and just follow through that the set. The hopping cones, definitely one of the favorites in there. You can really get creative with those cones, though. You can put one on one side, then the other, and then have them have you run from one side to the other, and then they're looking at you, depending on how active you actually are in session. And then the next one is a paintbrush. I love having paintbrushes, like of any kind, in the play therapy space, but specifically ones that don't necessarily have paint on them. So she's running that through the sand, and she is visually just watching it as it goes back and forth across this tray. You can do the tapping, which is we're going to learn next, but also with paintbrushes, you could have them put their hands on the side of the sand tray or wherever and just tap on one side and then the other and give that tactile piece. Paintbrushes are excellent for grounding. So many different things you can do with the paintbrush in the play therapy space. So I want you to think about, what is a creative way for visual bilateral stimulation that you can think of? So you really just want to get their eyes moving. Another way is to use a miniature to go back and forth. I absolutely love using puppets, especially finger puppets. And also, I recently did a training of Carolyn Settles online. If you haven't had a training with her, and the training I took was amazing, be sure you do so. She has some really good information, Carolyn Settle. But one thing that she showed in her training was to use the fidget spinners and use that as the visual bilateral stimulation. And I bought some fidget spinners, and that works great because the kids are attracted to them moving. So I love using the fidget spinners in session for visual bilateral stimulation. All right, so tactile bilateral stimulation, and that's through touch. Tapping. I love to tap. One thing you need to really keep in your mind is you want to respect the client's wishes. The client may not want you that close to them. They certainly may not want you tapping on them. They may be okay with it for a little bit, but then they get tired of it. You just continuously check in. If you notice their body language, be very attuned. If you know their body language is kind of like, hey, I don't like this, then be respectful enough to stop and choose something different, because we really need our clients to feel safe and connected and respected in session. So if they don't like the tapping, then you just do a different method of bilateral stimulation. The next one, high fives. I love this one. I think this might be my favorite out of all of them. It offers all three methods of bilateral stimulation, but if you see where he's looking, he'll look at the hands, the my hands and his hands, but when when this picture was taken, he's actually looking right in my eyes. So we're very attuned, we're very connected. In fact, our hands are touching. So when we work with kids, dual awareness through that EMDR therapy process is one of the big important parts. So not only is he in like the tough memory, the trauma that he's working through, but he's also in the room with me, touching my hand, looking in my eyes in a very safe, connected space. So that dual awareness in itself is so very healing. Dr. Siegel says that a memory retrieved is a memory changed. So having that experience of reprocessing it in that very connected way is very healing. The next one, butterfly hugs. A lot of this learned the butterfly hug in your basic training. It is so good. So in this one, I had the client just close his eyes, just really notice what he's feeling in his body, and he pulled his little hand out so far that he is clapping hard enough to where it's auditory, but also it's tactile. The butterfly hug is cool because that's something that they can do on their own as well. Now, what are some creative ways for you to engage in tactile bilateral stimulation in your practice? So think about that, and think about just the intention of having that touch on either side of their body. You can do it with paintbrushes. Like I said in the other part, you can do it with tapping on their hands with your hands. You can even have them like ball up Play-Doh or clay and just pound their fist, alternating one side then the next. That one I just recently learned about when I was providing a training. Someone said they do that, and I love that idea. So have like two balls of Play-Doh and then have them alternate one side then the other. And then you can also use that to measure the BOC and the SUD. What else do you need to know to feel competent and comfortable to confidently provide EMDR therapy to your kid clients? It's so important that our clients feel safe, they feel connected. The stuff that they are going through and they are working through is really difficult in many cases. So we want to make sure that not only do we fully know their story and know their trauma history, and we know their resources, like through phase one, history taken and conceptualization, and target sequence plan, the treatment planning. But also in phase two, we want to make sure that we can prepare our clients, that they have enough resources, enough capacity for that just that regulation to have that emotional equilibrium to even be ready for reprocessing. And then maybe in phase three, identifying the target is something that may require some creativity with some of your clients, because we don't just ask them outright, especially if they're really young. You may just do that through the play or through the sand tray directives, or a number of different means. And then sometimes clients or clinicians are kind of shaky on, how do I elicit the negative and positive cognitions with kids? I know how to do that with adults, but what I do with children? And then the actual phase four, which this is definitely supportive. This training, this webinar is supportive of the phase four, because we're learning about bilateral stimulation, but there's way more to phase four than just the BLS. So sometimes clinicians need to know a bit more about that, and the installation, how to install that positive cognition in phase five. And a lot of clinicians get stuck on phase six, the body scan. Many kids may not have that somatic awareness yet, or they may have numbed out of parts of their body. So really helping kids be aware of what they feel in their body, where they feel it, and how to, do different things like pendulation, titration, and to breathe through it and to dislodge some of that distress is really good. So, but many people get stuck on that, and sometimes people get stuck on the reevaluation, that phase eight. What do I do, or the closing, not the phase eight, but the closing? How do I close out a session? What do I do when it comes time for the end of session, so that my child or teen client doesn't go out of session and back into their life very dysregulated, and things are harder than they were before? When that happens, that can be pretty tough. And then some clients are kind of a little shaky on, how do I do a reevaluation with a kid client at phase eight? So what do you need to know to go forward? Would you like me to teach you how to use all 8 phases of EMDR therapy aligned with the adaptive information processing model with your child and teen clients? I would love to help you if you need some help. There's way more to EMDR therapy than bilateral stimulation. So those are all the 8 phases: the history taking, preparation, assessment, desensitization, installation, body scan, closure, reevaluation. One thing that is very important, regardless of age, if you are doing EMDR therapy with a client, you need to follow the phases with fidelity. And what I mean by that is looking at Andrea's definition of each phase, what is the intent of each phase, and make sure that regardless of what age, whether you're doing it with play or what modalities that you're doing it with, that you are following that intent. So I teach clinicians about the window of tolerance and how to pull clients back into the green zone when they are hyper aroused, when they're just overstimulated, or the hypo aroused when it kind of looks like a lack of motivation or kind of disconnected. And also, that's my animal imagery book. I teach parents, teach clinicians how to talk to parents through parent consultation that supports the EMDR reprocessing. One thing that's specific to working with children is that when you talk to the parent or their caregivers, there's certain things and certain ways to do it that not only helps them to feel empowered to make a difference and make choices that are aligned with your client's healing, but also leaves them, because it's hard being a parent, leaves them feeling connected with you, and that hopeful feeling of like, I can trust this person, that they can help my kid, and I will follow the directions that they have to provide. You need to know exactly what to do and how to do it each step of the way. It's really important to, teach your client good emotional literacy, really support their awareness of feelings, and because that's a big part of EMDR. And also, that somatic awareness, really know some play-based techniques so that you're not relying on that left hemisphere of the child's brain to automatically function when children's left hemisphere are not nearly developed as their right hemisphere because they're kids. So you want to be able to truly help all of your clients regardless of age. So the little ones all the way up to your older clients. This is Diana. I'm also a supervisor, and I just want to tell you about a couple of things that the people that I work with said about me. This is what Diana Shaw said. Jackie gives practical and hands-on insight that I am able to apply in session immediately with positive results. Jackie is passionate about her work and pours that same passion into those she supervises. She makes herself available quite readily to answer questions I may have about my clients, and I'm a better clinician because of her supervision, and that's the truth. Diana, thank you so much. I love working with you. This is Tita. She's a consultee, and she is amazing. I love working with Tita. She is an incredible therapist. I have gotten so much from my consultation with Jackie, and I'm glad that I decided to pursue certification. I feel more confident about my use of EMDR and how to apply it with the clients I work with. Thank you, Tita. You're doing amazing work. Okay, so this is Tammy Van Hollander. I'm a huge fan of Tammy. I've learned a lot from Tammy about sand tray, and now I'm in a position where I get to support her through her certification process for EMDR therapy. Tammy is incredible. She says Jackie really knows her stuff, and I love how she really gets trauma, play therapy, and young children. She finds a creative way to incorporate EMDR into your practice in a simplified, loving, and healing way. Thank you, Tammy. You're the best. Okay, so this is Aspen. Aspen is incredible. She seeks out so many types of training. She's also a registered play therapist supervisor up in Canada. She is so good. She says, working with Jackie has been a wonderful experience. She has been so supportive as I learn how to integrate EMDR into my play therapy practice. I've learned so much from her and feel a lot more confident in my EMDR practice with children. She's down to earth and was willing to share so many resources to help support my learning process. I am so grateful for my consultation with Jackie and would highly recommend her as a consultant. Thank you, Aspen. That's beautiful, and you are amazing. Aspen does synergetic play therapy and so many other things too. She's really good. Okay, so I want to tell you guys about my 2 courses. It's bundled up now, but I have 2 courses, 8 phases of EMDR therapy with children and adolescent clients, and also the EMDR and sand tray therapy integrated. They are both step-by-step, self-paced online programs that shows you exactly what needs to be done so that when you are in your office working with your clients, that you know what to do. So here is Tamara. Tamara actually came to one of my in-person trainings. She flew down from Virginia to Florida. She says consultation with Jackie has transformed my play therapy practice. She's a wealth of information. I was so stuck in figuring out how to weave play therapy and EMDR together. After taking Jackie's workshop and then beginning group and individual consultation with her, I finally feel like I have a better foundation of skills to use. I highly recommend consultation with Jackie. You won't be disappointed. Thank you, Tamara. You know I'm a huge fan of you. I love working with Tamara. Okay, so here is a little peek into the 8 phases of EMDR therapy with children and adolescents course. This is the curriculum right there. I do a little intro, and then I go through each phase of EMDR therapy with children and adolescents so that you can really know not only the intent of each phase, but how to do that with kid clients by integrating play therapy techniques. And also, I have some handouts and really delve into different ways, different creative ways to like measure the SUD and the VOC to support emotional literacy, and especially I give you the handout, my body scan, that kid-friendly body scan that kids really get. Because sometimes if we do, just like they taught us in basic training, like, let me have you scan your body, notice any tight, tense, or any unusual sensations. Some kids are like, what did she say? So you'll want to make sure you have a kid-friendly approach so that you can really help them gain that somatic awareness. That's a big part of it. Here are the learning objectives for that 8 Phases of EMDR Therapy course, and this one is approved by EMDRIA for 7 credit hours. And also here is the learning objectives for the there they are, the 8 Phases of EMDR Therapy. And there's the course curriculum for the SandTray, EMDR and SandTray integrated course. And as you can see, I do a brief overview of EMDR therapy, then I do a brief review of SandTray therapy, and then we go through each phase. And in this course, there's a demonstration from beginning to end so that you know exactly what's going on. There's the learning objectives for that. So in the beginning of my EMDR work, I wasn't even certain that I was using EMDR with fidelity with my kid clients. As soon as I'd start something with kids, the kids would just hop up and start doing something else. It felt like random, just desperate efforts to even do part of the process. It felt like it was more of an interruption to my therapy session sometimes than a help. I knew there was more, though. I knew that EMDR was such a robust approach to help clients to do deep therapeutic work, but I just felt so unprepared on how to use it with my child and teen clients. Now, after years of seeking out information and honing my skills and attaining EMDR certification and now becoming an approved consultant, I feel competent and confident in my EMDR sessions with kids. Now, I use EMDR with a lot of kids. I'm not much different than you. I started out only knowing how to use EMDR therapy with adults. I felt clueless about how to use it with kids at first. Clients were continuously moving with short attention spans and limited adaptive information, as well as other things that they left me feeling inadequate, not knowing exactly what to do. So even as a registered play therapist, I felt frozen to implement EMDR with my children and teen clients. So I sought out hours of consultation. I read every book that I can get my hands on, and I took training after training to get where I am today. And if I can use it with kids, so can you. There's me with my superheroes. I thought that I could just use the tappers with my kid clients. That's what I thought at first, that's just what you do. I even had someone tell me, just follow the kid around the playroom with tappers. It doesn't work like that. If you're going to do EMDR therapy with a client, you need to follow all 8 phases. Some of my clients didn't even like the buzzing sensations, while others just pulled and played on them. So that wasn't even an option, and it wasn't EMDR. That's just providing the bilateral stimulation, which is not EMDR. That's just part of it. I didn't even think about the gazillion ways that there are to do bilateral stimulation with kids through play. Ways that kids can not only tolerate, but they actually like. Now, the BLS may look different each time, but it always meets the intention of creating the left-right rhythmic activation of the hemispheres through the brain to use throughout all 8 phases. Okay, so here are my courses. There's the 8 Phases of EMDR Therapy with Children and Adolescents. I'm not sure why that's only showing you part of the screen. And there's the EMDR and SandTray integrated. You can find these courses if you're interested. They're bundled up at the time of this recording. I'm not sure how long they will be bundled up. They're at a reduced price at the time of this recording. But you can find them at playtherapycommunity.teachable.com. And on there you can find those 2 courses as well as some other things. Also, if you are in need of EMDRIA approved consultation, I would love to help you. So my style with the consultation, like if you're working towards certification, which you can, if you are interested in EMDR certification, definitely go to EMDRIA's website and look at the requirements there. There are some consultation pieces, some training pieces. You have to get some support letters, things of that nature. You can find all the requirements. I run groups as well as I provide individual consultation as well, mainly online, some on person, but in person. But I work with a lot of child therapists specifically across the world. Some people are not even in the U.S. So if you're interested in those groups, you can go to my website, Jackie Flynn Consulting, or if you're interested in an individual consultation as well, I would love to work with you. All right, thank you so much for listening to this training, and I hope to see you maybe in a training in the future. You are more than welcome to join that Play Therapy Community Facebook group. I'd love to have you in there, and take care.